Maybe you can find it there on the map. We say this all the time, the story of CUNY is the story of New York City. New York City is this very big and vibrant place, but probably every New Yorker has a relationship to CUNY, whether they went there or know someone who did, or have walked past one of these campuses in their daily lives. So CUNY has played a really important role in the diversity and vibrancy.
No, this is better. I have it on the right side, and you can see the other person on the left.
We work on the Cultivating Archives and Institutional Memory project. This is a 3-year Mellon grant-funded project that started in 2024 and is set to run through January 27. It is administered by CUNY's Office of Library Services, or OLS. And OLS oversees library services for the system, shared technical resources, things like procurement of library resources, support for scholarly communications, things like that for all of the CUNY libraries. Our staff for this project is myself and Natalie and our colleague Bridget Day as our digital archivists as our 3 full-time staff members. We're also joined by 8 part-time emerging professionals who are our associate archivists. And the mission of our project is to tell CUNY stories through archives and by empowering archivists with shared systems, practices, and resources. And one of those systems being a shared instance of ArchivesSpace, which we'll talk about in a second. Another major initiative of this project is our physical and digital survey of archives across CUNY. And speaking of plug, we're going to be talking about our survey tomorrow virtually during session 305. So if you're interested in that, feel free to join us for that. You can also learn more about our project on the project website there. I can't underscore enough how momentous this project is for CUNY. This is really the first big major investment in CUNY-wide archival services. There's never been a staff like ours in OLS kind of focused on CUNY archives. No one kind of thinking big picture and thinking strategically about archives at CUNY. So as a result, the landscape of archives has been very uneven, and this is kind of borne out in our the data we've been collecting throughout our survey. Programs are very differently resourced, differently staffed, and at various stages of development and collection control. And archival description at the university, the landscape kind of bears this out and is kind of a symptom of this. So of the 26 archival repositories we are working with for our project, 12 use ArchivesSpace in independent instances. 14 do not use ArchivesSpace. About half create finding aids in Word or maybe have them online as a PDF. And then another half do not have finding aids, and that could be because the program, maybe there's material set aside, but there's no program to create finding aids, or the archive is really staffed by an academic librarian whose technical toolkit does not include creating a tax-compliant finding aid, much less using ArchivesSpace. There are some other systems used at the university. I put them there to describe and kind of serve archives to users. We are also implementing JSTOR Forum across the system too, but you'll find Collect Access, FileMaker Pro, and others as well. So our vision for ArchivesSpace at CUNY is a shared instance of ArchivesSpace used by all repositories. Each archive would have its own repository in the instance. We're working with lyricists for this project, and we're still cautiously optimistic for a timeline implementation of early 2026. Why are we doing this? We found that having a shared instance versus individual instances was a lower hard cost for the university system. And also the shared instance will be paid and supported by CUNY OLS. So really kind of lifting the cost and really accounting burden off of campuses and putting it on OLS, which does this for other library systems. The shared instance will create a shared PUI. that will allow researchers to search across all CUNY archives, intellectually unifying campus archives for the first time. And then also a shared instance will hopefully improve and unify control of collections across the system, allowing for the possibility of shared programs, support and governance. And there's been, CUNY archivists are really interested in shared offsite storage, perhaps a shared reading room at some point, and just generally more cooperation between them. So ArchivesSpace can be a platform to facilitate all of those things. And then for all the positives that a shared instance can bring, we identified very quickly some challenges ahead. Number one being that some of the records and functions of ArchivesSpace are shared across repositories. And last year we convened a group of experienced ArchivesSpace users at CUNY to create a working group to kind of assess and come up with a way forward for us. And we started by just kind of soliciting our colleagues to do a data dump over all of their, some of their data for these shared records. We noticed right away that at CUNY Archives, the most numerous shared records were agents and subjects, not unsurprisingly, and the issues we observed with these records in particular, these authorities were leading and trailing spaces with titles, inconsistencies in terms of name order, direct or indirect name order with agents, and then this last one, which has the most kind of bearing on the presentation today, no authority source or use of local source as the authority source, which in a shared instance would be fairly hard for us to disambiguate between agents with the same name, which could be really consequential because these campuses, although in the same geographical area, might actually have similar agents involved with their collections. And when we really drilled down and tried to figure out why this was happening, why were CUNY archivists creating agents with local source as the authority source, sometimes it just seemed like someone didn't go the extra mile to check LC and to check use the LC plugin to see if that agent did exist in an authority source. But oftentimes it was just the agent that was being described wasn't notable enough to rise to the level of being represented in an authority source like LC. So in addition to standardization and governance, to avoid kind of a massive mess, we knew that we needed to provide CUNY archivists with a new way of creating an authority name and incorporating that into ArchivesSpace. We really needed an easy way, a very low bar way for any archivist to create an authorized agent, especially for an agent, someone who's kind of hidden, maybe not so notable, and not represented in LC and NAF. We needed a knowledge base and ontology that supports multilingual description because we have these wonderful ethnic studies archives and a very diverse student base and constituency in a very international city. We needed a knowledge base that provides a unique identifier, so we could put that into ArchivesSpace. And then we needed something that was very robust, that was well supported, and that could maybe even help amplify our CUNY archives and draw people back to the finding aid. So that's where our idea of using Wikidata and ArchivesSpace was born, and I'll turn it over to Natalie.
Thanks, Regina. Hi, everybody. So the timing of our experience at CUNY, I mean, I'd like to just point back to something that Regina was talking about. We are really there as part of a 3-year project. And so we recognize that we represent a kind of sprint of activity for our university, and that we are a resource that will not remain. So one of the things that I thought was really important to do while being a university's first university archivist, I mean, mean, so there's never been a university archivist before, so there is a backlog. Was to bring in our partners from Wikimedia NYC, who I've always had really good luck working with. They're wonderful collaborators, really generous with their time and expertise, and also with their availability to help us do fundraising. So together we worked on a proposal that was funded by the Craig Newmark Philanthropies to have a Wikimedian in residence with us for the last 2 years of the time that we're going to be at CUNY. And that really is a game changer. So Richard Natalie is our Wikimedian in residence. He's pictured here in the bottom right corner, and he is somebody who has also done residencies at the Met and I believe also at the Anaheim. So he has a really great level of experience with integrating into a cultural heritage or educational organization and figuring out ways to plug in and be helpful. And so one of the things that we've really been working on is figuring out how to even manage his time, because we got a really robust response that was really positive when we sent out word to our colleagues across the university that he was available to work with them. And so we have him in classrooms and working with individual faculty members, but we also have him working with offices that are CUNY central offices, such as our Office of Research, to try to get our CUNY affiliated scholars and faculty members more discoverable on the web, and all of our open educational resources, which are really published through the office that Regina and I work out of, and that also Richard works out of, which is the Office of Library Services, to get those more discoverable on the web. And so that really matches the ethos of the Wikimedia movement, to try to get open information just out to more audiences and get high quality, good information out. And it also really dovetails nicely with an important part of our deliverables for our Mellon-funded project, the Cultivating Archives and Institutional Memory Project, which is to raise awareness of CUNY's archival collections, both within the world of CUNY and also to a greater public. And so we know that that these efforts are going to be really helpful. And because of the concerns that we saw immediately when we started thinking about all of these individual instances of ArchivesSpace all come crashing together, and seeing all of these agent records that are going to be kind of a mess when we have like this initial merging, we knew that we would need to develop some governance and some decision making around how to keep all of these things straight. And so it seems to us that using Wikidata will be a really good way of helping us to keep these things straight. And then we were really pleased to see in January that we were not alone in thinking about integrating Wikidata into ArchivesSpace. So our colleague Amanda Sorensen wrote on the ArchivesSpace listserv asking for anybody who was interested in or anybody who knew about a script that was being developed for a Wikidata plugin. And so when we saw this message, we reached out to Amanda and then also to our other colleagues working at other places that we knew were also engaged in this kind of thinking. And we formed a kind of team that meets regularly and just talked about our respective institutions, our challenges with authority control, and then also talked about the promise that we saw for a Wikidata plugin for ArchivesSpace. So these are the folks who are really leading the charge and working on this project with us. So we, I think, met like maybe 4 times to talk about this, and pretty quickly realized that we wanted to have a simple tool to begin with, and that we thought it was really important to socialize this work within both the Wikimedia community and also within the ArchivesSpace community, so that we were developing something that would really fit people's needs and that we were bringing our communities along with us. So we have a full requirements document for the plugin, which we're happy to share with you, but I thought I would just include this one table that's from the requirements document here to kind of show you how we've been thinking about it. We have some must-have kind of features, which is basically like querying existing Wikidata entity records and bringing them in, having some kind of an autofill function where you can see what it is before you bring it in, but not trying to do more sophisticated things yet, like build it initially to be able to create a Wikidata entity record that then you can export out into Wikidata. And some of that has to do with people needing to have a Wikidata login and having to already be content creators. So I think that these are things that we could perhaps work on and develop later. There also will be features like having automatic updates or even scans that are looking for inconsistencies in records that could be updated. So it's really the most simple possible way that we could build it on the front end, which is just to have something that would query existing Wikidata entity records. And then we knew that we needed to have a developer work on this with us. So we submitted a funding proposal to the Wikimedia Foundation for $5,000, which was funded. And if anybody has any interest in doing these kinds of proposals, I would encourage you to take a look. The QR code here will lead you to the proposal that we wrote, but it's a really interesting funding model because everything is extremely transparent. So you can look at everyone's proposals, and you can look at the questions that were asked by the program officer back and forth, and see the dialogue and the things that were asked about, and then see the result if things got funded or not. So it's a really kind of nice case study that's really open, where you can learn about what kind of things the Wikimedia Foundation funds. So with this funding, we'll be able to hire somebody to develop this initial tool with us. So now back to our questions. We're really hoping, and we know that there are microphones here and here, where people can walk up and make sure that we're capturing your question and we're recording. We really would be interested to understand a little bit about the experience that's in this room and find out, maybe even just first by a show of hands, how many people use Wikidata? So not even editing it, but using it, okay. And how many people edit Wikidata? Okay, yeah, so a few of us. And if folks are available to just come up and share about any answers to any of these questions, we really would love to hear about what kinds of local name authority control you maintain, and if you have local name thesauri that you are maintaining. So with that, I'm going to move over here and let's maybe try to have a little bit of a conversation. Thank you so much.
So my name is Natalie. I'm an ATP archivist, and so we're actually switching over from our old database to ArchivesSpace. And one of the bigger problems that we're having is also with the whole naming agents and authority. So I was just curious, how are you guys actually handling that? Because obviously you're dealing with more archive institutions and everything else, and we just have one, and we're still struggling because when people are moving it in, they would sometimes have like 3 entries for the same name. And so I was just curious, did you guys figure out any way to do that easily without tearing your hair out?
I mean, we're trying to do things before the data all floods in, and so that's when we had our first edit-a-thon of the data that we extracted, and so trying to help people to get their agent records synchronized in their individual instances before they come in. And then we're also asking Richard, our Wikimedian in residence, to help us
half
to
the
create
table and
Wikidata
them in the
entity
middle.
records for all of the agents that don't
As tight as I
aren't
can.
linked to LOC authorities. And so then at least we'll know that the things that are already in there will be able to be linked to a Wikidata entity number. I don't know if there's more you'd like to say about some of this work work ahead.
I don't know if we figured it out yet. I think it's a kind of an hands-on deck approach, and I think there's going to be a lot of training in the coming months to not only help the folks who are already in ArchivesSpace kind of deal with the fact that their shared records are not really going to be really shared. And then also helping the new users understand how we would like them to work in the system.
I also feel like the notability piece is really kind of something that we're discussing as governance amongst ourselves of, what threshold do you need to meet within, your significance to a collection before you even get an agent record. And there's really different practice, it seems, within the different individual instances of how nuts people go with creating agent records. So, yeah.
Sorry, I don't have.
This is perfect, because, again, as I said, we uploaded it first. We didn't stop to clean it. And so I was just curious how you guys did it. You said you stopped to clean it first before you uploaded it. So that
I think it's going to end up being a little bit of
And I think part of it too is that we have a very slow procurement process, and so we're like, all right, let's make money.
something.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. So we primarily use Wikidata for the archives at property, which we do as part of our processing process. And I was also kind of exploring Wikidata for entities this summer with relationships and other sort of thematic aspects. But primarily, at NYU, we've been kind of trying to create more NACO records, name authority records in the Library of Congress, name authority file, and part of kind of from an archival perspective, which sort of gets at your sort of notability comment and kind of pushing against the sort of literary warrant idea of bibliographic cataloging. But we do use Wikidata identifiers as part of that. And I wanted to mention that because there is a new PCC effort called EMCO. I don't know if you've heard about it. That is, I think it's for entity management cooperative, but it's primarily Wikidata focused as far as I know. And I think part of the idea is to be a lighter lift, get past some of the barriers that name authority control usually has. And I think they are open to kind of not specifically bibliographic traditions. So that might be something you all might want to kind of think about a little.
Definitely, thank you, and thanks for bringing up that program. I think that's going to make a big difference. I would say that still I don't think that there are necessarily a lot of folks who are really in technical service roles or folks who are making big records or contributing to PCC or also in an archives, have an archives hat on in CUNY archives. I think we're definitely looking at needing to do some training around creating wiki data entity records even. So yeah, but I'm so glad that that one is being done. So thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Stephanie Keatigan, and I'm one of the archivists at the Alexander Architectural Archives, which is part of the University of Texas Austin Libraries. And we use Wikidata primarily for our agents, and also being in Architectural Archives, we also have done projects, my colleagues have done projects to create Wikidata records for buildings, where we can record things like name of the building and events that happen to the building, as well as people who were collaborators on the building. And we are engaged in a project right now to migrate into ArchivesSpace. We use very old file microfilm databases and spreadsheets, and we're moving our data into ArchivesSpace, also with another repository, IUT. And I think we are going to be so interested to use this plugin. And I just was wondering if you could share maybe some more information about the timeline of the plugin that you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we, after a few months of back and forth, almost have our account set up to be able to receive the money. So we have not hired the person yet who's going to do the work. I have a feeling that the actual development work will probably take, maybe an eighth of the time that it takes to actually set up the mechanism for, payment. So I would say, I don't know, maybe in a year. That's what we promised to the funder. So I think in a year it's going to exist. Yeah. I think, one of the other questions that is there is really about this community making decisions about what plugins we're going to invest our time and resources into. And one of the things that we really discussed with the group that we've been having these meetings with is the snack plugin. I'm curious, is anybody using the snack plugin in ArchivesSpace? We wondered if that would maybe come up today, but I think one of the things that came up for us is that there were folks who were dedicated to developing that tool at Carra who are not there, I guess. So we are looking to the Wikimedia community for a robust international community that's going to be around and developing tools that will sustain through many years and election cycles and political events that are happening in individual countries. So I think that that's a part of our decision-making with supporting a Wikidata approach. But I'm curious if there are other thoughts from you folks about where the ArchivesSpace user community should focus their attention in terms of what plugins we develop, what kind of systems we're building. We can have some table discussions about these things, and we look forward to talking with you guys later on today too. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Natalie. That's really, I'm excited about that. I think this is really interesting. I'm glad that you're willing to come and talk to us now. I'm glad that you're doing sort of a communal approach. You have a whole team around you, a discussion going on. I look forward to hearing more about it. I mean, you said a year, so I look forward to seeing the plugin at the next member forum. Yeah, we can have these discussions at the table. I think that the questions that you're asking are really important, especially around community responsibility for plugins, because that is something to keep in mind. As ArchivesSpace continues to put out new versions, how does that plugin stay up to date? I will say we got done a few sessions on things for plugins and stuff, as you know. But if anyone's interested, we can have table discussions about that kind of stuff, because that is it's an important part of developing plugins, sort of not a set it and forget it. Yeah, but we're going to go ahead and take our next break. We have plenty of time, so we're going to go ahead and take we'll take a 15-minute break, and then we'll come back together with our next session. But yeah, if anyone has questions, I'm volunteering Natalie and Regina to be grabbed. So feel free to go and talk to them, or talk amongst yourselves. But we'll get started in another 15 minutes.